Studying abroad remains a popular aspiration for Indian students, but the landscape is changing with new trends and opportunities, reflecting global shifts in education and technology. Hello everyone and welcome to the Now in Times Talk from the Heart. Our guest today is Shaista Baljee. She is the founder of Ivy Aspire, a boutique college and career counseling firm. It is based in India but has a global clientele. Shaista, hi and welcome to our show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Shaista, you started Ivy Aspire after studying at UPenn, that's the University of Pennsylvania, and then the Indian School of Business. From there to Ivy Aspire, what has your journey been like?
Wow, that's a trip down memory lane. Thank you for asking. So I remember at 13, I was very clear. I always knew I wanted to work with kids. I love people and that hasn't changed. What has changed is the definition of kids. At 13, kids were 4 and 5-year-olds. As you get older, kids become teenagers. So I always had that clarity of thought. And of course, college is something that helped me clarify that mission. And I studied psychology. So I'm a developmental psychologist. I studied a degree in communication studies, which I discovered at Penn. I didn't know that existed before I went there, and marketing. I then went on, I've worked a lot in educational media. I thought that was my interest at the beginning. I worked at the Campbell Soup Company, analyzing the role of the Campbell kids in advertising. I went on and worked at a human resource consulting firm, and then came back to India, which was very much a choice to do my MBA at the Indian School of Business. And it was an extremely enriching experience. But further clarified my goal to want to give back because I realized the value education had played in my life. I got married, moved to Bangalore, and as it typically starts for everyone, it started by helping cousins, then it started by helping friends of cousins, and there was a point where I was helping the acquaintances of acquaintances. And I realized that I loved it. I could put in a long day of work and then want to take these calls in the evening. And my aha moment came when I had someone who was an acquaintance of an acquaintance who called me back 6 months after a quick call with her and said, Shaista, you changed my life. We had this conversation. You were the only one who gave it to me straight. And this is exactly what I'm doing 6 months later, and I can't thank you enough. To me, it's definitely the power of relationships. And that's what propelled me then to start this professionally. And I love to say, while this is very professional and we're extremely proud of the success, what matters more is the relationships, to be able to provide students with insights, to be able to provide students with the ability to listen to their own voices and understand themselves, and also emotional handholding through the entire process. So that's the journey, and that's what continues to motivate me.
Wow. It is said that when you love your work, it is no longer work. And that can be seen as you're speaking about what you do. Now, today, with the new trends, and as I said in my introduction, the opportunities that are available, it is not always very clear, not only for children, but even their parents, because at that stage, it's parents who are making the big decisions. So, in this new scenario, how do you think parents, children should start planning and deciding how to go about what I should be doing in the future?
With more opportunities comes more confusion, right? I think there is a benefit and a cost, and I completely understand because I get asked all the time by parents that how do we help them choose? And it's such a crucial decision. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to remove pressure from every child who's ever gone for a social engagement and has been accosted by aunties and uncles saying, "Beta, what next?" Right? Because often they don't have an answer. And I keep explaining to my kids that when an adult asks that of you, frankly, they're just trying to converse with you. They're just trying to connect with you, and they're at a loss. They don't know what else to say. That's just the socially polite thing to say. At no point are they actually expecting you to have it figured out. When you're typically 14, 15, 16, 17, even 22, you feel the need to come up with a straight answer. I want to be a doctor, I'll practice medicine. I want to be a lawyer, I'll practice law. Somehow we need to empower our youth to say, look, I'm figuring it out. I'm exploring, and these are the steps I'm taking. And why don't you guide me with, what your experience has been? I think we need to change that dialogue to not saying what next to expect a one word answer, but to help students through this journey. And in my opinion, you're never too young to start exposure. Start talking to your fourth and fifth grade about what excites them. Talk to your sixth and seventh grade about what problems they'd want to solve. Slowly then piece this together as to say, okay, this is what you love. This is what you're good at. This is something that will help pay the bills, right? And this is something that will really set you apart. And at the confluence of this will be a career that you will love and you will excel at. So start young, give them a lot of exposure. Don't start with what you want to do, start with what you're good at, and make this a journey. And even if you figure it out at 17 or even at 21, that's fine. You have to then see it through for the rest of your life.
Right. So from what you've said, this is what I have got. You are saying start young. So when the child is in the fourth and the fifth, parents should watch. The observation is important as to what excites the child and what they are good at. And from there, I think we can start fine tuning, with taking the children into conversations, having conversations with them, and then trying to find out what exactly it is that they would be good at, what excites them, what they are interested in, rather than we as parents saying, I want you to do medicine, or you should take up mathematics or statistics, because right now that's what is required. So I get that, and what you have said, which is different, is that start when they're in the fourth and fifth, not asking them questions, but observing, right? Now, when parents and children start on this journey that I want to study, for example, I want to study in the US. What are some, as a parent, I want my daughter to study in the US, but as a parent, what are some myths, some misconceptions? Because I know you will be, with 18 years of experience, you have got such vast experience, and you must have come across parents and students who ask questions that, they are misinformed. So what are some of these myths and misconceptions?
That's actually a fantastic question. And really, what my life's work is to kind of debunk some of these myths.
True.
So I feel for a lot of people, there still is that old school thought, which is you have your academics and that's it, nothing else matters. At no point am I going to mislead you and say academics don't matter. Let's be fair, unless you're going to be an athlete or you're going to be a dancer, you're actually going to study. Of course, having basic academic rigor, having, comfort in academics, of course it's crucial. But it's not a database which is saying, here are your grades. Let me just rank you. The 0.1% goes on to Harvard, the 0.2% goes on to School X. That's not what happens. Eventually, they're accepting people. So I'm always amused when people are able to give a statistic and say, you know what, it is 60% grades and 10% this, because it doesn't work like that on a committee. They are getting to know you. Think of meeting someone who may tomorrow be a really dear friend of yours. Sure, in our own mind, we have some checklist of what works with us, what doesn't work with us, personality type, but most of it is fit. And that's exactly what colleges are. So it's much, much more than academics. It truly is who you are. There are a lot of intangible things like character, how you deal with a setback or failure, how kind you are to an individual, how do you spend your free time, what is your circumstance, what situation did you grow up in, how did you deal with that situation. So all of these things are things that matter, which sometimes a person underestimates because grades are just objective. It's just easy to be able to do that. So I find that that's something that is a myth that I definitely want to debunk. The second thing is that some people think the younger I start equals to more pressure. My child is already very pressurized. He or she is already in 8th or 9th grade, can barely manage the academics, now stopped going down to play, used to love reading, all of that is stopped. If I start doing things in an organized manner, oh my God, it'll be too much pressure. It's quite the reverse. That is the child who's crying out for help. That's a child who's saying, help me manage my time, help me prioritize. I'm in the 8th or 9th grade, I barely have time to meet my friends, I don't go out with my family on Sunday. That's definitely a red flag, right? So we need to come in as the adults and we need to teach them time management, not to add more, but first help them manage what they have and then slowly start adding more so the pressure becomes less. So it's actually the reverse. The earlier you less pressure, the later you start more pressure. The other thing that I think is a difficult one to hear, but you may have everything that you think is correct. You may have checked all the boxes. that doesn't equal to getting in. And in no way does that make you inferior, inadequate. It doesn't mean you have done something less. There are different things a college is looking for each year, and they're eventually trying to fit you into what their system is. Both ways, they're trying to make sure, do they have something to give you, right? Will you benefit from it, and will you be able to add value to their community? So, for any child to base their self worth on a particular college's acceptance, I think is also a myth. There are kids who may not get into their dream school, but go on to great colleges and do very, very well in life. So, a college definitely does not dictate your success in life or your self worth. So, these would be my top picks.
You're so right, Shaista, when you speak about pressure, because the pressure is not only felt by the child. I'm sure there must be parents who have shared this with you. Parents themselves feel pressure from family members, neighbors, friends, asking, "What is your child doing?" Right? So that pressure is always there. It's not just for the child. Of course, the child bears the brunt of it, but it's for parents as well. Now, there are also times where children, even by the time they're in the ninth standard, still haven't figured out what exactly they want to do. And parents are panicking. Parents are panicking. It's happened in my own family. And I remember my sister wondering, he's in the 10th already? I don't know. And every time you ask my nephew, what do you want to do? The answer was the same. I don't know. So in a situation like this, where children are feeling lost, parents are actually hyperventilating, to put it across. What advice would you give them, to the parents and to the children?
Reality to this. You're absolutely right. In an ideal world, we start exploration young. What if you're a 10th grader? You need to choose your subject, you need to choose your board. I think at that time, it's important to have relevant data and not go by guesswork, because certain doors should not be closed and we don't want kids to have regrets. At that time, I think a psychometric test can be a wonderful tool. I want to distinguish between an aptitude test, which just assesses what you're good at, which to some extent every child has a good sense of saying, look, I do well in these subjects. Either my grades say it or I spend endless number of hours reading about it. Psychometric test is trying to understand your personality, your wherewithal, how you function, your skill set, and then map the correct careers to you. So the simplest example I would give you is there's so many kids who come to me and say, Shaista, I love bio. I can spend hours reading about it. I do so well. I get a 99. And I love helping people. And in the family, you've heard it for years. Just become a doctor. She should definitely become a doctor. She's so good at bio. And that tells a child, stop exploring. You've found your fit. But think of the last time you met a doctor. Did you ever ask the doctor, how did you do in bio? What were your grades? You care, is your doctor accessible to you at 9:30, 10 at night sometimes, and 9:30, 10 in the morning. They have to have a wonderful bedside manner. Whenever you call in, typically you're always calling in need of something, in pain. They have to always be kind and compassionate. They have to be willing to put in long years, long hours for an extended period of time, which not everybody can do. You have to love to learn and be updated with what's happening. You want your doctor's diagnosis to be on point. The doctor has to be a team player, be able to collaborate with so many people, which frankly is far removed from your passion in bio and wanting to help people. So that's what a good psychometric test does. At least the one that we administer, we take 130 occupations, separated by gender, and then see in the long run, if you were to pursue a particular career, how likely are you to be happy and successful? Because at least our hope is for every child to be in the state of flow and love what they do, so it doesn't feel like work. So that time, I think a psychometric is a great idea. I wouldn't use it as an endpoint. Please don't use it as a weighing scale. It should not spit out a career. But it gives you great direction, which then you really investigate through maybe shadowing, internships, talking, reading a lot about the field before you make your final choice.
Right. Earlier you had said that there are students and parents who always believe that academics is the be all and the end all if you want to get into Ivy League colleges, for example. But I personally know of someone who was an A+ student and applied for a college in the US. I'm not sure which college, but he did not get in. What happens? Why does this happen? What is it that stops an A grade student from getting into an Ivy League college?
First off, it's devastating because the child has probably given up so many things they loved, so many opportunities just to pursue their academics. But truth be told, and I'm going to say this completely unvarnished because the intent is to help people and kind of, get rid of some of the layers, is that an Ivy League school wants someone for whom the academics come fairly easy, where you don't need to spend 100% of your time studying. So that typically is a good sign for a parent to also see, because my advice would be, having been to an Ivy League, you never want to be at the bottom 15% of an Ivy League. That can be horrible for your self-worth, for your ego, even for your career. Who's coming to pick up the bottom 10% of Harvard? You may as well be a slightly bigger fish in a slightly smaller pond. So if you feel 100% of your time is going to achieve the A grade, and even that was a stretch, for a lot of top tier schools, I'm not going to call them only Ivy Leagues, they immediately know that this child is going to really struggle academically, because I'm bringing the smartest kids from across the world. And in the US, the GPA is a curve, it's a relative grading. So if 50 people got 90%, you could end up with a C with a 90%. So that is something that obviously schools feel that the academics should come easily. So if you got your school academics, like, what are you truly passionate about? What have you done academically beyond the curriculum to showcase the passion? Which sometimes parents misunderstand and say, oh, Ivy League schools or schools in the US just want more tests. They are not saying take any tests. They're saying, just convince me that you're academically so motivated and you're genuinely curious. What have you done first academically outside the curriculum for which you are not being graded? Then you did all of that. But who are you? What do you do in the evenings, right? How do you spend your time? What are you passionate about? Is there a social cause that you feel strongly about? Is there a community cause you want to contribute to? What is it that you care about? You care about sport, you care about dance. And again, to shatter a myth, there is no pecking order. Sport is not better than dance, or MUN is not the holy grail. They're all equivalent. It's what you have done and how relevant it is to your story that matters. So I'm assuming this wonderful kid may have given up some great talents of his to study, either because that's what he was told, or because frankly that's how much the academics demanded of him. So it's not uncommon. You could have the great grades, but if for school fees you have nothing else to give to their community, or you can't take from their wonderful opportunities outside of academics, then perhaps not the right fit.
Shaista, what you said is very interesting, where you said, colleges, the admission team asks you questions like, besides the academics where you're graded, what else have you done which has not been graded? Now, in a situation like this, what is it exactly that they are speaking about?
It's really not formulaic. They just want to understand, if they're putting a class together, where do you fit in, if you fit in at all? What are the resources that you will use on campus? So campus has so many resources. On a Friday night, do they see you at a theater? Do they see you at the gym? Do they see you in a study room? Do they see you grabbing pizza with your friends, having an intellectual discussion? And they're not saying one is more important than the other, but they should clearly be able to understand, on a Friday night, where will you be? If you don't have that clarity, then immediately you perhaps don't have the ability to use their resources. So they want to make sure you can contribute to their resources and you can make ample use of their resources. When all you've done is study, and study largely because you're being graded, and not to take away from any child who's done well academically, that itself takes a lot of effort, right? We've all been students, we know the effort that it takes. But if we feel that it's largely been done because you have been graded, we don't know what you'll do on a Friday night. And we are trying to put together a diverse community. Each individual cannot be very diverse. So if I'm confused on a Friday night, will you be playing squash, or will you be doing theater, or will you be perhaps reading in the corner? I still don't know what you'll be doing, which means you perhaps have not demonstrated that clarity. So to make a diverse community, I want a group that does all these things. So I don't value one or more less. The only thing that is out of your control is that particular fit that year. So what nobody knows on an admissions committee is, how many people will I get that year who I expect to be in the theater department on a Friday? And if unfortunately that year that ends up being super competitive, then your chances that year are reduced. But even an AdCom member doesn't know it because they haven't seen what happens that year. So having that depth is what we say is very important. So a college also understands, what will you bring and what can you take from a community.
Wow, that sounds very challenging to know that, you have worked so hard, you have started building your profile, and you're still going into the unknown, because you don't know if your profile would be impressive and would be able to get you in and get you a seat at the college. Now, what building a profile is important. We all know that. We all know that. But when and at what age do you think we should start building this profile? And besides extracurricular activities and academics, what else can I add to it?
Sometimes the word building a profile today is accompanied with stress, and it just sounds, very manipulated. So I want to stay away from that word. I think what we want to do is we want to make a child college ready. At least that's my focus. And I feel you need to start by sowing the seeds. So grades 5 to 8 don't have to be stressful. We don't have to build anything, but please start with early exploration. How do we expect a ninth grader to get straight A's or get a 90% when we've never inculcated good study habits? And then it's easy as the adult in the room to say, but you don't study, you don't take things seriously. I've been saying it. So start young, start with good study habits, right? Start with setting some goals. It takes time for a person to be able to adapt to goal setting, break it into mini tasks. Teach them how to prioritize. You may have a friend's birthday party. You may have a football game. You may have a school test. What do you prioritize? Because you don't want to teach a child this or that. Ideally, your child should be able to do this and that. And that's very much an Ivy League or a top tier school mentality. Immediately when a child is saying, I can do this or that, to me, it's a red flag. You have to be able to do this, that, and
something else.
That's something that we need to start young, not in terms of building a profile or pushing them towards activities, setting a foundation. So when I work with kids at this age with a 6th grader, we start with these habits. Then toward the end, we say, okay, let's come up with one project for the year. Let's create that goal. Let's teach them challenges. Even if you don't accomplish it, that's fine. There's so much to be learned from that little setback, from that little challenge or the obstacles that you encounter. From grade 8, I like to use this as my slightly more serious foundation year, where we put better things in place. The exploration is a little bit more serious, a little bit more geared towards careers. All colleges, even the Indian schools, which a lot of people don't know, the private Indian schools, want to know all you've done from grade 9, 10, 11, and very early in grade 12, frankly, even before you've realized you're a 12th grader, you're applying for college. So you don't have these magical 4 years. You have about a little over 3 years. Deduct from that times you'll be busy with exams, God forbid some illness, travel days, you don't feel like working. It's not that much time. So at least from grade 8, I would say to be a little bit more strategic. From grade 9, slowly build those layers where you can do your academics, we can focus on a few areas you really like, to be able to build something that really shows you what are my strengths, what do I want to study, and frankly keeps you college ready. So I feel that's why it's a journey with a little bit more focus, of course, in the high school years.
Right. Shaista, India, most of our students, the students at least I know, many of them, not most, but many of them are very interested in going abroad. And with the changing scenario, the financial situation, the social situation, the world becoming a global village, studying abroad is becoming much easier than it was like 10 years ago, right? Or even 7 years ago, maybe. Today, children have so many more options. Besides US, UK, Canada, Australia, which are the other countries that are coming up and that promise not just good colleges, good education, but good opportunities to work, to do research?
I think some of it is related to what you may want to study. Certain countries may give you a better ecosystem, but I feel that parents are very comfortable sending their students to, even we've met with a lot of success. Students have been very happy going to Asia, so Hong Kong, Singapore, both safe, easily accessible, and though of course they have their own local culture, they're also very cosmopolitan. Plus they do present a lot of opportunities, so that's something that's very popular. The UAE is definitely coming up. A lot of colleges have tie-ups with some wonderful counterparts in the UK, in the US, and are providing great opportunities. Plus again, easy to come back to India, easy to be in touch with family, especially for the younger kids. Ireland is another great place that you can look at. I think Netherlands is another country in Europe which I feel sometimes slightly underexplored, but very, very friendly, very easy for a child, especially who's younger, to be able to go there, adjust, make their set of friends. As you're looking at masters and you have a few more opportunities, you're a little bit older, you know how to conduct yourself. So Germany becomes great for someone who's looking more at something technical, maybe looking at doing a PhD. All of these countries, of course, become equally popular. but maybe more European countries, depending on your field of interest. France, Spain, we send a lot of people for wonderful master's programs there. But I would do masters not so much at the undergrad level. Switzerland is fantastic for all things hospitality. So these would be great things to consider depending on your field of interest.
And of course, the budget. I think that's another big thing that has to be considered. Shaista, it's lovely speaking with you, and we have so much more that we need to discuss. Let's take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to the Now in Times Talk from the Heart. We are in conversation with Shaista Baljee. She is the founder of Ivy Aspire. Shaista, we have been speaking about the different colleges. So far you just mentioned that even countries like Netherlands, Singapore, Middle East are coming up, and that's exciting. If I were a student today, I would be super excited. However, most students, for them, the sort of mecca is US, right? However, with the changing rules, with the new government that's come in, and with job opportunities, the chances of staying back becoming really tiny. What advice would you give parents and students who are thinking of going there and studying?
So I'm actually fairly optimistic. And I feel every student of mine this year who had chosen to go to the US is continuing with their plans to study in the US despite having offers from multiple countries. And it's very heartwarming. A lot of my clients just in the last week, 10 days have messaged me. They've got their F1 visa. Everything is going well. I do a lot of master's applications as well. And a lot of my students in the last month and a half have actually written back saying, I want to put my master's on pause. I've got a job I was looking for. A client recently reached out saying my son has got an excellent internship, which he's based in LA. He'll be going to New York for training, coming back to LA. So it's not as grim, in my opinion, as it's made out to be. Yes, it's difficult. I'm not taking away from anyone who suffered. I think the just not knowing has been very difficult. But it's nice to see that even the visas that were sort of, temporarily put on hold, or certain people for whom the visa was just taken away, they're all being reinstated. I know a client it happened to, and he's already got everything reinstated. So I think things will settle down. There is upheaval for right now. What I would advise anyone who doesn't have a US citizenship and is looking to study in the US, I wouldn't give up that dream, but I would definitely say that let's apply to one or two more countries to have options at the end. You're typically going to go to college only now next year, or at least after the next 6 months. See what the situation is.
Right.
If you're even 5% uncomfortable, don't go. So have the options, don't do it because you didn't have choice. But in my opinion, for most people, it's been fine. So if it does work out for you, keep that dream alive.
Shaista, so far we have been speaking about colleges, we've been speaking about applications, admissions, the process and the profile. A very important question, which I think most parents and students would love to ask you is this. Okay, can you explain liberal arts, what exactly it is? After studying liberal arts, what are the job opportunities? And also, what are some different programs today that Ivy League and other A-grade colleges have, or schools are offering to students today that were not maybe available a few years ago?
Liberal arts is typically a terminology that is used more in the US. So we understand pre-professional programs, engineering, pre-med, business. So the belief is at the age of 17, 18, you're not really exposed enough to say, this is my only career choice. So liberal arts is meant to give you both breadth, so you can continue to explore, you can continue to build expertise, which is very useful in life because today it's all about transferable skills. It's no longer just being career ready. But at the same time, we don't want you to end up as a jack of all trades, so you have to be a master of one, which becomes your major. So as part of a liberal arts discipline, irrespective of what you may choose to focus on. Let's say I was a psych major, I still had to take classes related to the human body. I had to take classes related to math. I had to take classes related to writing. I had to take classes related to a variety of streams, which just gives me foundational knowledge and a way of thinking. So there is a set bucket of requirements, and you have a lot of options within it. So that's really interesting. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, you and I are both studying psychology together. We're in the same year. We both have to fulfill a writing requirement. You might be very passionate about Goan history, and you may want to write about the culture of Goa. I may be very passionate about the Roman history or Egypt history, and I could choose to write about that. And we could both be peers. So it's highly customizable, but still we are both learning the skill of writing. Then, as I've got this breadth of knowledge, I now need to choose one or two areas to go deeper in what we call a major. The liberal arts is not to be confused with the Indian arts, which is just sociology, psychology. It includes everything. Things like economics, pure math degrees, science degrees, biology, history, everything actually largely falls under liberal arts. To take my analogy further, you and I are both studying psychology. While we'll have some basic foundational courses, obviously I can't qualify as a psychologist if I don't have my basics right. Maybe your interest is more in abnormal psychology. Maybe I enjoyed my social psychology classes more. I could further go down and customize my classes that I end up focusing on social psychology and you focus more on the psychology you liked. So it's something that gives you great breadth and also great depth. Depending on how you structure your degree, if you take certain employable fields, at the minute you add a math, you add a statistics, you add an economics, you add a psychology, a computer science degree is typically in the liberal arts school, you can be employable straight after undergrad. But for a lot of people, they choose to follow up their liberal arts degree with a master's degree to now gain further specialist skills and then go ahead and enter employment. It's not that that is something that you have to do, but the option to study further exists. So that's typically what a liberal arts degree would be. And great if you're still figuring it out or just want to say, okay, I think I'm clear about this. Like I entered very clear. I know I wanted to do psychology, but I learned I wanted to do communication studies only once I went there. In terms of new fields, I'm finding a lot of interdisciplinary fields are really rising because it's becoming more about skills gained and less about topics learned. So a lot of colleges are introducing majors even at the undergraduate level in things like data science, in things like artificial intelligence that they're applying across business, they're applying across various fields. We're seeing this culmination of psychology, economics being married with things like finance. So you have behavioral finance, behavioral economics, which is very interesting. We have cognitive science, which marries psychology and computer science. A lot in the field of design as well. So we have things like HCI, we have game development and design, all these fields now becoming available at the undergrad level. You have material science, which was typically more of a master's field. So lots is happening, and it's great to see colleges really keep up with the times and listen to what is required and then invest in that.
Like I said earlier, it sounds so interesting. I would be super excited to get, these combinations that you have spoken about. Imagine I'm doing psychology and I'm also doing business at the same time. How wonderful, how absolutely engaging that is. To my next question, standardized tests that I know of, when I was younger in college, I know that if you want to go abroad, you have these standardized tests. However, today it has become test free in some colleges. Am I right? Can you just throw some light on this topic?
A lot of colleges actually went test blind during COVID because they felt it was extremely unfair. We saw in India itself that SAT and ACT were cancelled repetitively. So they felt it's only fair to not have that as a factor in the admissions process. So for a couple of years, all colleges went completely test free. Then a few colleges said, no, we don't feel that the data we have is very accurate. And Yale went on record to say that the SAT or ACT score is the best predictor of how a student will do at Yale and helps us figure out our dropout rate. So colleges started saying, let's be test optional. We're not going to penalize someone, but hey, if a child would like to give their test scores, then we want to factor it in because it also speaks about a child's motivation. Of late, a lot of colleges have actually changed their policy and have gone back to saying test mandatory. Okay. So this year itself, we have 3 kids who have got accepted into Stanford. Stanford is a test mandatory. because they feel it matters. But at the same time, I don't want to discourage anyone from applying to a top tier school just if their test scores aren't great. Even for my Stanford admits, my test scores have ranged from the SAT range to the high 1400s to the 1500s. Not all of my three admits had perfect 1600 scores as people would believe, which is why the profile does matter. But this is how the testing landscape is changing. My advice, at least attempt the test, do it wholeheartedly, use it as something that can enhance your application. However, if you feel you're just not a good test taker, you've given it everything and it doesn't represent your potential, as long as the school is test optional or test blind, still go ahead and apply to a school that you're excited to apply to.
Right. Essays are a very big part of the application process. With as far as essays are concerned, what makes an essay stand out for when the college team is looking at it? What is it that they're looking for in that essay? Of course, you can't anymore just copy and paste. It's not, of course, not done. But what is it that they're looking for?
I think that's a very, very relevant question. I know for every student, it just is so tempting when you have this AI tool at your fingertips and you're facing writer's block, and it's just so easy, and it's this beautifully crafted narrative that comes out. It is definitely very tempting. But please let this be a cautionary tale to every student out there. All colleges have AI detectors. They have started putting it into their application forms that if AI usage is detected, and that could be through a detector, it could be through a reader. And honestly, I read college essays, I help kids with essays. I can tell instantaneously if AI has been used. Immediately your application is flagged and rejected. So all those years of effort, doing everything authentically, just for a little bit of convenience, not worth it. So don't even go the AI route. I would advise don't even put idea generation into AI because it's a slippery slope. Then why not just one sentence? Why not just one paragraph, right? That's what will set you apart, your ability to be human, your ability to be relatable, the ability to tell your story. A lot of people get very scared about essays because we're often told they read it and they will not like it and they want this and this is good. Always ask people, who is the they? And they don't have an answer. Like, that's just a shocking question to be asked. What do you mean by who is the they? That's a weird question. The they is someone like me. I have read on college committees. Do I look scary? Do I look very judgmental? We are trying to actually encourage good students to join our fold. We are not trying to reject people. We are trying to accept people. These are readers who love students, who love to hear stories. And who can tell your story better than you? Not your aunt, not your friend, not an AI, but you. That's all you need to do. You need to tell, of course, your best story in the best possible way to a human reader who's going to feel it's relatable, figure out the right kind of qualities, just simply want to have a cup of coffee with you, feel like you belong to their fold. So it's not as intimidating as it needs to be. Let your authentic voice shine. Let it be true to who you are. Let it be related to the rest of your application. Please don't make it a resume or a list or sort of like, I want to say everything. At the end of it, I should be very clear about who you are. I should feel you know yourself well enough. And I should feel like you're a good stand-up human being. That's what matters.
And authentic, right? That's what you've been saying from quite some time. From the time you started your answer, it's about just being you. And that's important. Yes. Now, the next one is the interview process. Okay, so you have gone through the tests, you have qualified, you have now come to the interview. That is another scary part. So what tips would you give when you go for these interviews, and what are some qualitative parts that students should concentrate on?
So I interview for Penn and ISB. Of course, ethically, I don't do it anymore because I help kids get into these schools. And funnily enough, I just spent last weekend with the person who interviewed me to get into Penn. So the interviews are very human. It's a relationship. Please don't forget that. What's really nice in an interview is to be able to form a bond. Remember, it's a conversation. The person is trying to figure out those slight intangible qualities about you. Some pet peeves that I have when I interview is people are not willing to listen to your question. The kids have come in so nervous, so rehearsed that they just want to give you their answer. So often you're asking, Why are you a good fit for the school? And they're answering why that school. So the first thing is listen to the question. The second is you do not have to be impressive. Trust me, today, with the kind of exposure we have, very little impresses us. You just have to be likable. Leave me feeling good about you. Leave me feeling I'd love to be able to have you as part of my alumni network and get to know you. Be likable, be a nice person. Also, slightly structure your answers. Sometimes I feel kids end up meandering a lot. So, of course, rehearse, be prepared. You knew the interview was coming. Preparation is again a sign of being, dedicated, being hardworking. Do your research. And then structure your answers. We all know today attention spans are so limited. So, give the answer up front, then back it up with evidence. Someone who's structured, made the effort to learn will stand out in an interview.
Recently, we have been hearing about students applying to US. Their applications are vetted thoroughly, so thoroughly that even their social media platforms are being checked. So what should students do or not do, firstly, and also how does, because the colleges I'm sure are utilizing AI, and what exactly is the role of AI in college admissions today?
If we talk about social media, I think in general your social media should be something which is not hurtful or disrespectful to any religion, individual. Anything that could be hurtful should not be something you stand for. Irrespective if it may be a personal belief and you engage in a debate with someone, then there is a different environment to share that, but maybe social media isn't that environment. So I would suggest not only colleges, but in general, that's not the kind of stuff that should be on your social media feed. Anything that is insensitive, hurtful, or perhaps you don't have full information about. Please don't judge these things. It's not even your age or your place, frankly, to be either standing for a cause or not standing for a cause when information is limited. Once you've done your research, you have full knowledge, then it makes sense. And I actually don't think it's unfair for colleges to want to understand that. Because there is safety concerns, there are a lot of concerns. So in general, I would even advocate for parents to sit down with their students, and their children and explain this to them. Because we live in troubled times. So we don't want to offend anyone. We want to teach our kids inclusivity and sensitivity. In terms of AI, I think colleges are also getting smart, right? Just as the kids are using AI to make their lives easier.
So true.
Even the colleges are using it
of
for
course.
basic, pattern recognition, basic information, just to kind of consolidate things. But still, at I would say most colleges, there are enough human readers that come in. It is just, AI is just giving us that data point. It's giving us data in a manner that's easy for us to understand. It's also helping us come up with a few trends, which in general makes admissions a little bit more robust. But there are human readers that are still looking for human qualities. So if there's one thing that I would put in caps, it's be human. Be authentic. That's what's going to make you stand out.
Right. Be human. Shaista, once students get into the college of their choice, today, like I have said, everything is evolving. There are new trends, new opportunities. But you see, where internships are concerned, like I know so many students in Canada right now who are really struggling. And it's very heart-wrenching because I know their parents have taken loans, spent a lot of money for them to go, and they're not even getting proper internships. So visa, of course, for US, that is a sticky topic, but internships, job opportunities, everything's changing. How should students and parents adapt to this ever evolving scenario?
That's definitely devastating, and I think it's true. I think across the board, in most countries, students have had it very, very tough for the last 2 years, and I'm talking about fantastic kids, very qualified, hardworking. So again, I want to remind the students that this is not about you. It's just the economy going through its cycle and things will settle down. But please hustle, right? All the more reason from day one to be proactive, make that network, sit with your career services, understand what they're looking at, upskill yourself from day one. So even if there are fewer jobs, hopefully with the effort you put in, you are towards the top of being hired. And again, like I was saying, I've had so many students in the last month and a half who've persisted, and it has not been easy, and have been able to get their jobs, which is good to hear.
Right.
A few words of advice from my own experience as well. A lot of us have this, great dream in our heads. I studied at a great school. I worked so hard to get here. I'm now going to land the plum job. I want to only work at a McKinsey New York office. I want to work at, maybe a BCG in Toronto. I want to work in the London office. And sometimes that's not going to happen. You may have to work at a slightly lesser known firm, maybe in a location that was not your top choice. Please apply to those jobs. Do not disregard it. Those are sometimes great opportunities, and often you may progress much faster and grow much faster in your career than just being at a brand name. I feel a lot of students discount it because it just doesn't, keep up with their dream. Even if it ends up being a foot in the door, through that you might network. You may then be able to transition to the perfect role that you want or that company that you want. So please be bullish and take opportunities, because all of these are great opportunities and frankly often underestimated. Second is, start with an internship if you're not getting a full-time job. That could translate. And these are all stepping stones. So I think we are so used to
Right.
now to take this escalator that we have to take it slow. I think, Mr. Viral Doshi says this very well. He's my mentor. He sent me to college, so I'm going to borrow from him. Look at this more as an investment towards building a skill set, building a personality, building a way of thinking, which will pay rich dividends. Don't look at this exactly as I spent X on education. I want an immediate return on investment. For me, that's always been my philosophy. I think the return on investment comes, and in my experience, you will get a phenomenal return on investment if you've done things seriously and you've been hardworking. Just the window, one has to be flexible. Right? If I looked at my undergrad degree at Penn and said, this is how much I spent, I want an immediate return on investment, I may have been disappointed. But today, when I have the benefit of hindsight, I think that degree has paid its value 100 times over in terms of what it has taught me, my confidence, my voice, the network that I've got, the feeling of self-worth, and of course, the money that I've been able to make in a career that I love. So I think our window of ROI needs to change. But I would advise for parents, it's not inexpensive. I don't want to make light of that. So make judicious decisions. If you feel that you need that immediate ROI, then maybe we need to find something that's a little bit more budget friendly, or go down the scholarship route. For me, over 80% of my students, I help them earn a scholarship. So we have to be real within the confines that every individual has.
Right. So, from what you have said, is that you need to be patient. Hard work is, of course, it's a must. You cannot move ahead without the hard work and the patience. And Shaista, what I have noticed, I'm sure you know it as well, that we as Indians are very resilient. We are not only hardworking, we are so resilient. Every time we fall, we dust ourselves and we get up and move ahead. So that is, kudos to all of us. You have been giving us so much of, so many tips, so much of advice. My last question to you before we say bye is, what is that one piece of advice that you would like to give, not just students wanting to study abroad, but also their parents? Make it a combined advice so it becomes easier and there is no pressure on anyone.
Maybe open communication. I think communication is something that both the students and the parents have to work on. I would advise the parents maybe ask less questions in terms of, why is this not done, or what do you want to be? Maybe just sit by their side 15 minutes, sit down, understand the child without a series of questions where you can get a straight answer. Because that's your role, right? To encourage exploration, to just sit with them in a feeling. For the students as well, sometimes students have become so trained to give the answer that will get mom and dad off my back. Like, this is the answer which will not lead to a follow-up question or constant nagging or pestering, how we feel at that age, is even a student has to want to communicate. So I think if parents and students work together and maybe set out some time, it could be a simple Sunday lunch or just a walk, in the community where we are just talking about our feelings, talking about what makes you anxious. Maybe a parent talking about a hard time they faced in their growing up years. It immediately makes them combined in this effort, because frankly, no one is alone. The child is not alone, the parent is not alone. Their goal is completely identical. It's shared. But somehow I feel for a lot of people it starts feeling individual as the kids get older. So to kind of bridge this, I think would be beautiful because the child feels supported, right? The parent knows what's going on. And then there are smiles all around. The goal and the rest of it will always follow.
And like we said, we are very resilient people, and with resilience and with the hard work, hopefully, very hopefully, there should be success should follow. Shaista, thank you so much.
100%.
Thank you so much. You've given us so much of information, and the tips that you've given us, I'm sure that those who are looking to study abroad will benefit tremendously from what Shaista has shared with us. Shaista, for your time, for your patience, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I wish well to everyone, and I encourage everyone, always pursue your dreams. Never give up.
Thank you. To our audience, thank you for your time, patience and attention. And until next time, take care. Thank you.